We took 5 of the current best-selling cordless wet-dry vacuums and put them through a grueling set of tests. We tested their suction, airflow, battery life, noise level, and all kinds of pickup tests. We gave them scores based on these results, and this video will sum it all up. I should mention that this video was made possible by Ridgid, who loaned us all of these vacuums and even gave us one of them to test. They did so with the understanding that we at Vacuum Wars would do all of our usual tests and that we would show both the good and the bad results. I think that you'll agree that the nature of these tests make it really hard for us to play favorites even if we wanted to. So links in the description to all of these vacuums, and let's get started. I divided this test into 2 parts, the smaller 2 to 3 gallon versions for the first group and the larger heavyweight division for the second group. I should also mention that we use the same size battery, that is 9 amp hours, for every vacuum in this competition so that we could reasonably rule out battery size as a factor, though it should be said that most of these wet-dry vacuums can use various types and sizes of batteries from their manufacturers, which is something I wish more cordless vacuum companies would do. First up for the lightweights was the suction and airflow tests. We tested their suction with a suction gauge and their airflow with an anemometer, added those numbers together for a combined power score, and found that the Ridgid X4 took the top spot with 125, the Milwakee was number 2 with 113, the Ryobi 3rd, and the Dewalt way behind in last place. In case you're wondering, this will be the point system we'll be using for this competition. It's probably not surprising that these rankings were basically mirrored with some other power-based tests, like the one where we test how quickly it can clear a given amount of water after the switch is flipped. Again, the Ridgid X4 was the best here, getting the fastest score, and it was noticeably faster, like 33% faster than the next closest one, which was the Milwakee, which was interesting. The first pickup test was using a deep mat and heavy debris, in this case sand. The idea was to see how many passes it took at a certain speed to pick up all of the debris. For the record, I found that this test was as much about the shape of the included tool than the suction or airflow, though of course they played a role as well. Again, the Ridgid X4 won by effortlessly picking up all of the debris in one pass. The Ryobi was second place by almost getting it all in one pass. I think I called it 1.5 passes on the spreadsheet. Interestingly, the Dewalt did better than the Milwakee here, I think because the Milwakee claw tool disperses the airflow a little more than the Dewalt tool does. The next test, where we embedded 100 grams of sand onto black carpet and used the claw tool, was very similar, with the Ridgid X4 first, the Ryobi second, and the next 2 were a little harder to judge, but I would say that the Milwakee did marginally better here. I also wanted to add that I did not really like the tools that most of them provided. They either snowplowed the sand or kind of scattered and popped the sand around when I was actually trying to clean up the mess. I'm really trying not to overly praise the Ridgid here, but I have to give it credit for this claw tool. It may not be very wide, but it's extremely well designed, and I didn't have either of the problems that the other 3 had when trying to clean up the sand. Battery life numbers were pretty much inversely proportional to their power scores. The least powerful, the Dewalt, had the longest battery life, and by a significant margin at 52 minutes. It was pretty interesting that even the last place Ridgid was getting 31 minutes of battery life. The reason I say it's interesting is that in the vacuum world, all of these are crazy numbers. Take for example the Dyson V11 cordless vacuum. In its highest power setting, which is about 59 CFM of airflow, it only gets about 10 minutes of runtime. So to get 31 minutes at 86 CFM is something I haven't seen before. Noise level was basically a tie, with the Ridgid and the Dewalt doing the best. The Ridgid has the longest hose at 7 feet. With filtration, it was a little difficult to score since 2 of them, the Milwakee and the Dewalt, came with HEPA filters, while the Ryobi and the Ridgid did not, but at least with the Ridgid you can choose to upgrade to a better filter, and as far as I know this is not an option with the Ryobi, so I scored the round like this. For price, I took into account the unit price and the price for a battery and a charger and scored it like this. The last category was warranty length, where the Ridgid took first place again with a lifetime warranty compared to between 3 and 5 years for the others. So that brings the lightweight category to a close, with the Ridgid X4 I think unquestionably the best for its price range and size. Moving on to the heavyweight bout between the Ridgid 18-volt 9-gallon and the Ryobi 18-volt 1+ 6-gallon. It should be noted before we move on that the Ridgid has the option for using 2 batteries here. It can run perfectly on 1 battery, but it does mean that I had to do some of these tests twice. For example, on the power test, the Ryobi, which only has 1 battery, scored 138 on the power test. The Ridgid with only 1 battery scored 148. But with 2 batteries, the Ridgid numbers jumped even more to 163. So either way you look at it, the Ridgid wins this round. The Ridgid 9-gallon also won the water test by a significant amount, sucking up the water in almost half the time it took the Ryobi. The pickup tests were all Ridgid as well. To be fair, the Ryobi did not come with a claw tool like its smaller version did, and the tool it did come with really wasn't geared for this particular test. On the sand and the carpet test, Ridgid did better on both the single battery and double battery tests than the Ryobi. To be fair, the Ryobi did pretty good on this test, just not as good as the Ridgid. With battery life, again, the least powerful vacuum got a longer battery life, but only by 2 minutes. But when you add the second battery on the Ridgid, it got 1 hour and 2 minutes, which is just amazing. Seriously, an hour of battery life while running at 117 CFM, which is higher than just about any regular corded vacuum cleaner on the market, is something to write home about. Noise level went to the Ridgid, hose length was tied, filtration was tied, but again the point goes to the Ridgid for having the option to upgrade. Price went to the Ryobi, and warranty went to the Ridgid for again a lifetime warranty versus a 3-year warranty on the Ryobi. So as you might have guessed, the Ridgid 18-volt 9-gallon won in a landslide. On the whole, I was impressed with all of these vacuums. They all seem well built. I wasn't sure if battery technology had progressed to the point where a workhorse shop vac could be battery operated, but I think these tests show that these guys are all ready to go to work. Links in the description to all the vacuums I mentioned, and be sure to subscribe to Vacuum Wars to keep up with all the latest vacuums, robot vacuums, and carpet cleaners, and thanks for watching.